All right, good morning and greetings from South Georgia, USA. Greetings to the entire world. We are here on the 18th of May, 2025. It is a Sunday morning, the first day of the week. And we are, I'm showing you the greenhouse. The greenhouse is officially closed for the summer. Now, we may use this for other reasons than growing plants, like we are planning to dry our mulberry leaves in here, and we'll try to find other uses for it. But it gets hot as blue blazes in here in the summertime. Um, we will try to keep our cardboard down on the ground to keep the grass from growing up. We found out that that's a lot easier than. You'd be surprised what'll grow in a greenhouse that reaches 120 days. Most anything will. But we've moved all of our fig cuttings out. And I can tell you that I believe that the figs and the other potted plants were glad to get out of the greenhouse, even though I had it shaded partly by shade cloth. But it reached a lot of heat in here. And I'll show you. I think that they're happy to be out. So we're going to give you a little quick tour of the different plants and how they're happier outside. Now, I have been moving them out a little bit at the time, and now they're all out. I've got them under these persimmon trees to get shade so that they can get used to it. But, and they're having to get used to a little bit of wind pushing them around. I did notice that some of the fig varieties seem to have a slightly different color of the leaves, and I'm going to check into that. I think it's just the variety. But now, I've got some over here now. I've got another little location. And now, what in the world am I going to do with these 100+ figs that I rooted? I'm going to plant some of them, and some of them I will try to keep in good condition until such time as I might sell a few, or I might up pot them. I don't know. But I know one thing. A lot of the guys out there on YouTube grow their figs in pots. But if you look at their location, like up in Philadelphia, up in colder climates, they have to move those indoors a lot of times in the wintertime. But I don't have that problem here. And I think that a fig, whenever you grow them in pots, you can up pot them into bigger and bigger pots, but you still have to pull them out every few years and cut some of the roots off. It's called root pruning. And that's one of the things that if you have to grow them in pots because of your cold climate, you have to root prune them. So my plan is to keep very few in pots, only if I have to try to move them. I found a local store that said that they would sell my fig trees at their location. So I may be trying to do some of that, but I want to make sure they're well rooted and really in good shape before I offer them up. I want them to be really nice. So that may be this year, and it may be next year, and it may not be at all. So we're going to walk around and I'll show you the rest of them. But my project today is to plant one of those that actually has figs growing on it. Okay, I've actually got these in groups. I've got 5 groups. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups. And I find it easier to take care of them that way. And we'll show you the groups, and you can see how many I've got, and they're looking beautiful. And there's another one over there. And then there's one down there. 5 groups, plus those over there. This is the first time I've rooted fig trees on this scale. I've done it before, but now what to do with it? My plan is to have a large fig orchard, have these all over the place, and I do invite people here to the farm to show them the different fruit trees and the animals, and maybe throw a Boston bud on the grill and try to just have a place where people can bring their kids and all, and that's my plan of what to do with this place. And so we're going to go now over to, I'll show you the other fig tree that we're going to actually try to plant, and we'll meet you over there. Okay, we're out here in the area where we're having to clean up damage from the hurricane. And there was a high fence right through here, and there was a whole row of grapevines right here we had to tear out. And this is what it looks like this morning. And you can see that the little chickens are having a good time in there, pecking around and scratching and trying to find different diatoms that grow in the ground. Little creatures, little shelled creatures and wormy things and all. And that's what chickens eat when they're allowed to roam. And that's how they make eggs. They eat those diatoms, little shelled creatures, things that we can't even see. They're able to scratch and peck and eat. What a wonderful homestead animal is the chicken. We're not going to be able to let our chickens run free all the time now because they get up in the persimmon trees and eat the persimmons. However, we will let them roam when there's nothing that they can damage. They really enjoy that, and it really keeps them healthy. All right, now this is where I'm going to plant the fig that I've got. I prepared this ground with a rototiller about a week ago, maybe a little more, to get the grass out of it. And then I dug this hole with the excavator, and that I like to prepare the ground before time. I've learned that the hard way. And there's the grass over there, that little pile right there. That's all the grass and the roots we got out of this hole. And we'll let that die down and we'll use that for mulch. Okay, the fig tree. Let me get it. Okay, this is it right here. This is a LSU Improved Celeste. This tree right here, I'm pretty sure I rooted this one from the original tree that I bought from the nursery. And it has grown very nicely. It has figs on it. And I haven't checked the roots of it lately, but this one's going in the ground. And the chickens are checking out my hole, but I'm not going to put this fig tree in there without protection. I have a wire cage that I'm going to put around it. When it gets big, it won't need that, but I don't want these chickens messing with these figs and messing with this tree. So let's see what develops here. Obviously, this hole is way too deep right now. We can see that this has got to come up quite a bit. And I'm going to do that. We're going to pause now. Okay, I'm going to try to maintain the soil structure by putting the clay back first, because that's the way that it was in nature. The clay is in the bottom. And I dug the hole with the excavator, and the clay winds up on top in the pile of dirt. So we'll try to reverse that. We can't get it perfect, but Come on, Clay. All right, now I like having a big hole too. And I dug it with the excavator, and that's another reason that you out there, if you can do it, I think you really need one of these Kubota mini excavators. KO 33-4, I think is what it's called. And you can check out my other videos on that machine. But I use it on a daily basis out here. This clay is still pretty wet. But I think it'll be fine. Let's see how that looks in that hole. Okay, that's looking like it's pretty close to the ground level. All right, let's see what we've got here. Let's see what kind of roots we have on this fig tree. I look at this as just a big pot right here, this hole in the ground. All right, fig tree, come on out, come on out. Come on, baby. Oh yeah, got good roots right there. Let's see how we want it to grow. This is a pretty good location here. It's a good sunny location. Essentially, it's going to get full sun. And this tree has been sitting in full sun in the pot. Now, those that I have in the shade of the persimmon trees, ideally, I would sit them in the pots in a shade, in a more sunny location a little bit at the time before I planted them in the ground, because they would get sunburned just like we do when we... Okay, you'd be surprised how good it works to prepare the site and get completely free of grass before you plant a tree. And that way the grass does not immediately become a competitor with the tree. Now eventually grass will grow, but also the tree grows. And the tree begins to make shade under the tree. And grass does not thrive in shade, and that's how the tree protects itself. And will claim this spot eventually by spreading the leaves out. All right, we're going to break again because I think this is probably going to take a while, and there's not much. If I could think of anything else to tell you about the tree, about how to do it, but I think this is self-explanatory. Prepare your site before you plant the tree if possible. Think ahead. And I did that with my hand rototiller by killing the grass and raking it up, and then I dug the hole with my excavator. Okay, we're going to pause right now. Okay, one other thing that I did was I could see a big root that had circled the pot. It was circling it, and I reached in there with my finger and pulled that root out. Now I'm going to take that and spread it out so this tree will start reaching out into the ground. Here's another one over here, a pretty long one, see there? I just gently pull that out with my finger. So this tree now has got, the roots are going out way beyond that where the pot would. If you don't pull those roots out, it'll take them a lot longer to reach out into the hole. I feel good about that. I know I'm taking a long time doing this, but I'll tell you, I've already taken a long time to get it to where it is right now. I've been definitely babying these trees for months and months, rooting them and getting them in the greenhouse and taking care of them through the winter, the cold nights. And here we are, finally reaching the point where they go to the ground. Now there is some grass mixed up in here, which I will try to get out. Now your tree will survive if you don't make your site free of grass, but it'll struggle more. Now here's another root here that's gone around the tree. See there? There we go. Come on out, root. And I'll make a little hole for it where it can spread out. The soil is quite moist in here now because we had like 4 days of torrential rains here in South Georgia within last week. I mean torrential rains. But the figs were out there in the yard the whole time. Obviously, I didn't have to water them. I guess I could do this with a shovel, couldn't I? But the shovel won't break it up. It's kind of clumped into crumbles, into clots. And I can break that up with my fingers a little bit. Okay, come on, tree. I might have got it a little bit too high, but I don't think it'll hurt anything. It's kind of hard to tell where the actual level of the soil is once you all right, we're going to break again. All right, we're going to get the last remnants of grass out of here. Rake it smooth and clean. And there it is. It's been a halfway decent amount of work to get this thing rooted and planted. But this thing here will last for many, many years. Hopefully, God willing. But it should. I know there's an old saying in the Bible that he who tends the fig tree will eat of its fruit. Now I'm going to do something else that is difficult to do. Very difficult to do. I'm going to have to delay my enjoyment of this fig tree so that at a time in the future, I will get a great deal more enjoyment out of this fig tree. And you notice it's got figs on it. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could eat those figs when they got ripe? But what I have heard for years is that the first fruits need to be sacrificed. And the reason is that it makes the tree stronger and healthier for the future. Sacrificing the first fruits. You know where I'm going with that, don't you? I'm going to Jesus now. Now, the Bible definitely says, when they're talking about growing fruit trees, not to eat the fruit, the first fruits. That's a biblical horticultural instruction. And to this day, that is what is advised. Sacrificing the first fruits so that you will have more in the end. And that is one thing that Jesus is called, is the first fruit from the resurrection of the dead. And I hope I'm getting my theology correct, but I think it's pretty roughly correct. Jesus died and was resurrected from the dead so that we might live eternally. So the idea of the fruit of the fig tree being sacrificed, it has a sound horticultural reason. It's not just theological, because the fruit takes a great deal of energy from the tree. So by sacrificing the fruit, and possibly I'm probably going to prune some of it off, this tree is going to wind up being stronger and better in the end. But yes, I want to eat that fruit. I don't want to do that. I do not want to sacrifice the pleasure of the flesh, because that's a fleshly thing right there. That tree will taste good in my mouth. I mean, that fig. It's the same way with many fleshly needs. If we eat too much food, we are penalized by getting overweight and staying sick. But if we sacrifice some of our eating, that would be eating very little or even fasting, God has built in a mechanism for us to heal by doing that. Not only do we heal physically, but fasting also makes it easier for us to contemplate on the spiritual things of importance. In other words, you can hear God's voice better when you refrain from pigging out all the time and refrain from a lot of different foods. Well, you know, sugar is one of them. And that has become so common, refined sugar in our society, that we finally figured out how to make it so efficiently that we were poisoning ourselves with the refined sugar. I saw a chart one time. Back in England, they always kept statistics on manufacturing way back. They've been keeping them for hundreds of years. And one of the statistics that they were keeping was how much sugar, refined sugar, was being produced in England. And back several hundred years ago, the amount of refined sugar that was being produced for the whole of England was very small, because they didn't yet have the manufacturing process. It was very expensive and time consuming to refine sugar out of various agricultural products like beets and sugar cane. I don't guess they had sugar cane then in England, but they had stuff. I've even heard you could make sugar out of dandelions. But as manufacturing processes grew, each year they were making a little bit more. Instead of making 1,000 pounds, the next year they might make 1,200 pounds. And it continued to grow into modern times until they were making huge quantities of sugar, relatively cheap, and people were buying it, and they were sweetening their tea, and they were making tea and sweet biscuits. I don't know what they call them, but we call them muffins. And so people were getting more and more refined sugar. Well, another statistic that they were keeping at the time was the mortality statistics. Certain diseases. And as the sugar production went up in England through the years, the different diseases that were associated with sugar went up also. And then, to put icing on the cake, statistically speaking, during the World Wars, the sugar was cut off from the people to a great extent because they had to ship huge quantities of sugar over to the troops fighting in World War I and World War II. And so the people were restricted on the amount of sugar that they could get. They were restricted. They got some, but not much. And guess what? The mortality statistics also plunged with the sugar. As the people were restricted on sugar, their mortality rates also went down. They lived longer. Is sugar bad? Did God make something bad by making sugar? Well, no. These figs have sugar in them. And they will have sugar. They're very wonderful. But guess what? It's only for a very short period of time that the figs do that. So we do get sugar in our fruits, but not nowadays. They ship fruits from all over the world. And we're getting sugar year-round in our fruits instead of waiting to the appropriate season for the sugar production of the figs. Basically, what I'm saying is this. There's nothing wrong with figs and fruit, but it doesn't need to be given to us all year, and then combined also with the refined sugar and the candies and chocolates and in the coffees and teas and sodas and all that, that is contributing greatly to the sickness and epidemic proportions, not only in this country, but particularly in the Western countries where people have access to those sugars. So, limiting your pleasures makes you stronger. It's a pleasure to rest and sleep. But if you rest and sleep all the time, then you're going to get weak. Rest and sleep should be earned after working. And that's another thing we're not doing. Modern society is doing it all with machines. People don't work now physically. Used to, 90% of the workers were farm workers, people that own small farms. Now, 90% of the people do not work on farms and do not grow things and work with their hands and get out and work. Because it's all done with chemicals, by the way, which are horrible nightmares, chemical poisons to keep people from having to work with the hoe and the shovel. Now, I could get a chemical right now that I could spray on the ground around this tree. And the grass, or probably a little powder or a little granule, they call it post-emergent herbicide. They do it on their fields, and they put it and mix it in when they plant corn and other crops. And that particular chemical targets grass, but does not kill the corn. And so they don't have to cultivate their crop. Therefore, they can do it more cheaply, grow more of it with less labor, but there's a price to pay, a big price to pay. Now, we can't go back to the days of mechanical cultivation anymore in this country. I guess we could if we had to. Lots of people would starve and lots of people would die. But in our individual lives, in our individual gardens, we can do that. And we can also try to stay away from the products that we know are exposed to those chemicals. Roundup is one of them. They've even genetically modified the crops by inserting certain genes into the seed making process that would make the crop more resistant to the chemical, so that they could spray larger amounts of the Roundup on the ground and not kill the corn. And they call that Roundup Ready corn. And that's what they use around here right now. You don't have to have it. You don't have to have that in your home garden. You can grow corn. And when grass comes up around your corn, you get a hoe after it, or a rototiller, run up and down the rows. So, you're going to see me do a sacrifice right now. It's going to seem my hands do not want to do this. But I know that it's the best thing to do. All right, let's have a look at this tree and let's see what it might need. All right, so the figs for next year, and even for the rest of the year, I don't know, may grow out and have figs later in the season, but these figs are never going to do anything here. So I don't want to do this because my mouth, my tongue wants to enjoy these figs. But I know that in the long run, come on, little fig, in the long run, this is going to be the best thing to do. Now there are here's another one here. I know this is not what we want to do. All right, now see this fig right here, this is called a terminal bud right here. That's not going to grow anymore this season. So really this needs to be cut off right here so that the tree can grow out. Now this is not, there are nodes along in here. This is not what, oh, I didn't want to do that, but I did it. Now we don't want this tree to come out from way down here. No, we don't want that, nor way down here. We want this tree to come out up here and branch up here. Do we want it to come out here? No, that's a little too low to suit me. Okay? Now, you see the white on there, that's the sap coming out. That's kind of a tarry substance that will cause that wound to heal. And there's a node right here. My guess is that this one is going to branch out here somewhere. That node seems to be right there. That's where the leaf scar is going to be. So it'll come out in this direction. So here we are, sacrificing our short-term pleasure, which I would have gotten a great deal of pleasure out of eating those figs in July. But I'm going to get a lot more out of it by sacrificing now. And as I said, Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice. He came to earth and he sacrificed himself as a first fruit. He was cut off from the land of the living, just like I cut this off right here from the tree so that it would come out. And 3 days and 3 nights later, Jesus raised himself from the dead and became the first example of what we can expect when we die. If we do believe in him, in his sacrifice, and we say, yes, Jesus, I do believe. And that's all we have to do. But I think it helps to understand what he did so that we'll know what we do believe in. What do we believe in? Well, we believe that Jesus came from heaven. We believe that Jesus is divine. That is God. We believe that he's God's son, even though we can't quite understand how all that works. No, we can't understand all that. We don't understand much of anything. I don't understand how this tree grows. Now, we know more and more things now that we have microscopes and different things, but we never do get to the bottom of it. What is life? We don't know what it is. Well, I'll tell you what life is. I'm going to tell you, we do know what life is, but we don't know. But from scientific, we can't scientifically tell what life is. Jesus said, I am the way. Follow me is what he was saying. Do what I tell you to do, and I will take you to a good place, and you will be very happy for it. But it is put off. We're not going to get there without immediately. We're only going to get there when we die. Now that's a tough thing, isn't it? You mean we've got to believe in Jesus, but we've got to die to find out if he was telling the truth? Well, guess what? That's the way it shook out. I am the way, he said. Follow me. I am the truth. I am telling you the truth. And I am the life. The life. And Jesus essentially said, okay, I'm going to sacrifice myself and take your penalty for sin upon myself, but I'm going to do it, and now I'm going to let them put me in the grave 3 days, and I'm going to come back to life, and I will show myself to you. Then you can have confidence that by believing in me, when you die, you will also be resurrected from the dead at some point. Won't be necessarily 3 days and 3 nights, but as far as you're concerned, you'll be dead and you won't be thinking, so it could be the same thing as just very shortly. So the lesson of this fig tree is that even though I didn't want to cut this tree and sacrifice this right here, sacrifice my pleasure of eating those figs, I did it anyway because I knew that in the end I was going to have more figs and more pleasure. If I live till this thing makes figs again, might not do that, but I'll tell you this, I feel quite certain that when I arise and go to the kingdom of heaven, that there will be fig trees there that we just will not even imagine how wonderful they'll be. So we need to be informed that sacrificing is for our own good. Eating less, staying away from the processed foods, the sugars, trying to constantly not have to work. We need to get out and use our bodies and work. We need to walk. Let me show you something that I discovered years ago. This right here, this roughly from my navel down, is legs and feet. Half of our body is legs and feet. God didn't put that on us so that we could ride all the time and not have to move. Walking is really, really good exercise. I recommend it. All right, I think I've said enough. If you want to believe Jesus, you can't quite say, I don't quite get it, I don't quite understand it, how can that be true? You can ask Jesus to show himself to you. You just say, Jesus, will you show yourself to me? I'm interested. I've heard an awful lot. There's a lot of people talking about you. You're a pretty famous guy. You just say, Jesus, will you show yourself to me? And he will do it. I do not know of one person, I have not heard of it, and I'm not saying there isn't, that asked Jesus to reveal himself to them that Jesus did not. As a matter of fact, YouTube is full of testimonies where people from all over the world, even Muslim people, all kinds of different religions, finally bit the bullet and said, okay, Jesus, if you're real, show yourself to me. And he did. He made it happen in their mind. So we like to end our videos by saying the Lord's Prayer. And we'd like you to do it with us, and we'll try to keep you updated. Look at that sacrifice right there, laying on the ground, all the figs, and now look at that. This tree's going to jump now. All right, would you say the Lord's Prayer with us? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.